At 65 years old, adults are twice as likely to be killed or injured by fire. That risk grows with age, doubling by 85. Fire is not the only hazard that threatens our older citizens. Falls lead the cause of death for unintentional injury in the home. 30% of people aged 65 and older are involved in falls each year. This leads to injuries, loss of mobility, and sometimes even death. Reduced mobility hampers movement and may result in failure to escape a fire. Because fire spreads rapidly in the home, sometimes only seconds are left to escape. By giving you the tools and tips to prevent these two issues, we can help you age in place safely. This is Remembering When. I'm here today with Rich McCarthy, and we're going to talk about smoke detectors today. Rich, now, what office do you work for?
I work for the Office of State Fire Marshal. I'm the Assistant State Fire Marshal. I head the Inspection Prevention Division.
So you must know your smoke detectors.
I know smoke detectors. Smoke detectors are a crucial part of fire prevention. It's the early detection.
So what are some helpful tips for people to install smoke detectors in the homes? What should they be looking for?
The code requirements are that you have a smoke detector in your bedroom, each bedroom, outside the bedrooms, and on all levels of the building. And in new construction, they are required to be interconnected. That is your best defense and best way to get notification. When we look at the speed that fire travels, nowadays we have so much more in our homes. Back when I was growing up, we were lucky to have a TV. You had one TV, it was in the living room. Now we have TVs in the den, in the kitchen, in the bedrooms. We have TVs everywhere. We have more fire load. The other part is our construction techniques. Years ago, we built everything with solid lumber, 2x10s, 2x12s. Our floors were all solid. Everything was solid. Now we're dealing with trusses, we're dealing with I-joists, which are structurally wonderful, but in the fire world, they degrade quicker. When you look at the times, legacy construction, if you have a fire in a basement with legacy construction, which would be considered 2x10 construction, 1x6 rough sawn boards, and then a finished hardwood floor, much like we're sitting in today. Yeah. Burn through time or collapse time would be about 18 minutes. In a new home that may have I-joists or trusses and a single layer of plywood, maybe carpet, burn through time is 6 minutes. Wow. So as you can see, the fires are moving faster, collapse happens quicker. If we complied with 1976 requirements and we had one detector outside your bedroom and you had a fire in a bedroom, it could take up to 2 minutes for that detector to activate. Knowing that your house, if it's new construction, may be structurally unsound in 6 minutes doesn't give you a lot of time to get out of the building. Where if you have a detector in your bedroom, and if you have one outside the bedroom and they're interconnected, that detector could go off in as little as 15 seconds, giving you that precious amount of time to get out of the building.
So even if you're in a legacy home, even if you're in a home that's older and it wasn't required at that time to have a smoke detector in your bedroom, it's still really important to take those extra steps and to install that smoke detector inside your bedroom.
That is correct. It is critical to get that detection on all sides of that door. Now, with new technology, if you had a house such as the one we're in today, you would be looking at a minimum requirement of having at least a battery-powered detector inside, outside, all levels of the building. There would not be the requirement to interconnect because that's in new construction. But with the advent of technology, you can actually get battery-powered smoke detectors which are interconnected wirelessly. Smoke detectors are actually have to be replaced every 10 years. There is a date stamped on the back of them, And if it is battery powered, you have to change the battery. That is critical. We always talk about make sure the battery is changed, even in a hardwired detector. With the battery backup, change the battery. Because for that 9-volt battery or the AA or whatever the battery is, it's very cheap insurance to make sure that it's going to work when you need it.
So Rich, let's talk about smoke detectors in the kitchen.
The problem that we always find is that people complain and people take them down because they will set it in a kitchen. I mean, here we stand not too far from the stove, and we realize that we get false alarms. People always joke saying, well, the reason we have the smoke detector is we know when breakfast is ready. The problem is we see so many times that people will take the smoke detector down, take the battery out, and never put it back up. It's pretty simple. There's a silence button. On all smoke detectors, there's the button right in the middle that actually silences the alarm. So all you have to do is push it. It's going to actually deactivate the smoke detector for just a few minutes till the air clears. Then you're not taking it down. You're not going to chance not getting it put back up. It would be such a tragedy to find in a fire to find a smoke detector sitting on a table with no battery. Now, if you're installing a smoke detector near a kitchen, if you're within 20 feet of a kitchen, you should use a photoelectric style detector. It's actually required in statute now that it is photoelectric. Now, photoelectric basically takes a beam of light and shoots it into a sensor. When the smoke obscures the beam of light, it changes the direction of the light, obscures it, activates the alarm. The other type of detector is an ionization detector. An ionization detector basically takes a small radioactive particle, puts it in between two pieces of metal, and it actually charges the ions. When smoke goes through, it actually changes the airflow, and when that airflow changes, it activates the alarm. Photoelectric detectors are better at sensing smoldering fires, slow-moving fires, where an ionization detector is better for more of a flaming fire. So if you can, the best thing is to get a dual detector. You can actually get them that have photoelectric and ionization. That is your best bang for that would be the best. And the other part is where should it go? They're basically limited. It's got to be no greater than 12 inches down. Best place is on the ceiling, but it makes it hard to get access to change the batteries. Here, honestly, you can change the batteries without even getting a stepladder. So this one is located in a correct position. It is within 20 feet, so we'd hope that it's a photoelectric, but we do have it on this level.
So, Rich, right now we're upstairs in the bedroom, and what are we looking at here?
Looks like we've got our smoke detector, which is located here, which once again is inside the bedroom. It's a little different because we've got the door at the bottom of the stairs, but that's okay. We're still going to get notification. As we found, we had our detector outside the bedroom across from the door downstairs, which is a good location. So we have them outside the bedroom, inside the bedroom. When we talk about outside the bedroom, NFPA really looks at it as long as it's within 20 feet of the door. Okay. So people always say, well, how far can it be? Around 20 feet.
So, Rich, what should people do when their alarm goes off?
If you're awoken at night to the smoke detector going off, get out of the house. I mean, it's just that simple. You need to get out of the house, call the fire department, call 911, and wait for help. I get so many people that go, well, we have to go see where the fire is. Why? Get out of the building. The smoke detector is doing its job. There's something wrong. Get out of the building, call 911, they'll come help.
Well, great advice for everyone at home. Again, if you have any questions, always check the State Fire Marshal's webpage as well. There's always helpful hints on there and tips to keep you safe. And until next time, stay safe. The temperatures are dropping and water is freezing. Winter is finally here.
Although it's cold, that doesn't mean it's automatically safe to be out on the ice.
To be safe, make sure you have the appropriate thickness of ice for your recreational activity. A minimum of 2 inches of ice is required for walking, 4 inches for fishing, 5 for ATVs, and 8 to 12 for light vehicles. Always be wary on river ice. It is usually 15% weaker than ice on a lake or a pond.
Don't let weather fool you. Always check ice before you venture out. Thick and blue, tried and true. Thin and crispy, way too risky.
We're here today at Avita, Brunswick to show you how to retrofit your home to prevent falls. The leading cause of death from injuries in populations 65 years and older are from falls. Older Americans are more susceptible to falls, and as a result, 9,500 deaths occur each year from this. We can take preventative measures to keep our balance and ensure we are sure-footed. Using non-slip mats in the bathtub and on shower floors can give traction on an otherwise slick surface. Installing grab bars on the wall next to the bathtub, shower, and toilet can help with balance as we transition from sitting to standing. Just having something sturdy to hold on to helps maintain balance. A shower seat can help those susceptible to falls bathe safely. If liquids spill on the floor, wipe them up. Keep the floor dry. A few steps towards prevention can make your space safe and slip-free. Taking the time to safeguard your identity against theft is important. One simple way to do this is by shredding important documents and your credit cards. When you are done with documents that contain vital information, shred them. Don't throw them away. Cutting them with a pair of scissors is not effective. Use a cross-cut shredder. This ensures that no one can recover your information. Do the same with your credit card. Cutting one with scissors will not be effective. Criminals will take the time to piece that back together. Check with your local government, AARP, or other nonprofit organization for document shredding days in your local community. Safeguard your identity, shred for security.
Hi, I'm Jeff Emerson, Deputy Chief of the Brunswick Fire Department. We're here again with Director Jim Graves of Maine Fire Service Institute, talking about historic fires in American history. Today we're going to talk about a fire that I personally feel is one of the most significant fires in American history, a fire that took place in Chicago at a Catholic school. Jim, tell me a little bit about when this took place and where we were as a nation.
The year's 1958, December 1st, just coming back, from Thanksgiving holidays. Chicago is a major metropolitan city in America. Catholic school in the Humboldt district of the city of Chicago. Primarily Irish Americans, Polish Americans, German Americans settled in that area. All of Catholic descent. So they attended Our Lady of Angel School in that area. The school was Catholic school and had about 1,600 students. On December 1st, 1958, at approximately 2 in the afternoon, school got out at about 3 in the afternoon. A fire broke out in the basement area, stairway, and 195 individuals perished, and 92 of them being children. What was going on in the country at the time? Cold War. Okay, so Sputnik had been launched October of '57 and had been going around orbiting the Earth. Americans were on edge of this big red machine over in Europe after World War II. The country was somewhat booming post World War II, so we're in a great economic boom, but also now we're entering into the Cold War. It's first years of the Cold War, I would say.
Jim, let's talk about the fire itself for a minute. You said it started down below. I mean, where did it come from? Do we know how it started? How fast was it?
So the fire is officially listed as undetermined. They do feel it may have been set by a student, but it was never really proven that it was set. But the fire took off. There was, again, with any other catastrophic event, there's a series of things that take place and failures. So in this case, a janitor was actually outside and he saw a glow in the downstairs. Now, if you look at this building is quite similar to the Catholic school in Brunswick. I believe it's on Pleasant Street. It has that subfloor that kind of rises up, so then your first and second floor. So he's walking by, this janitor, and sees a glow, and he tries to get, the evacuation begun. And as I recall, I think he had to run to the rectory to get them to call the fire department. And this obviously slowed down the response of the Chicago Fire Department. So the fire department gets notified, and within 4 minutes they're on scene. Unfortunately, this fire went up. It's a chimney effect. It's a wide open wooden stairway. So the fire takes off in that stairway and it shoots right up. We know about upblast. I mean, fires, they seek height, heat, thermal, all right, going up hard and fast. Gets up to the second floor and splashes. So room 211 and 210 are right in direct path of this fire, and that's where most of your fatalities occur. Again, 92 students and 3 nuns perish in this fire. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the chaos. Again, you and I have responded to fires. I've never responded to something like this. This would be, I think, as a firefighter going in, I think the civilian should really try to understand this. Put yourself in that position. You're on duty in a fire station at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The alarm comes in, the bells ring in your firehouse, and you get into your protective clothing at the time, pull-up boots and rubber coats and your leather fire helmet. And you get on the engine and you respond. And you get there, and what do you see? You see this huge school with smoke puking out everywhere. And you may have a child in that school, okay? So think about that. But you got to do your job. And laddering becomes important. You get students bailing out of the second floor. Kids were jumping out left and right. It just became very chaotic. What do? Rescue, right? That's our priority as firefighters. We rescue. But you also have to extinguish. So you had multiple companies coming in, responding to this incident, and I think it was just sheer chaos. And you know that the fire service has come a long way since 1958 in management, scene management and whatnot. So it was very chaotic.
What were some of the factors in the students' inability to escape this fire?
The stairways were being plugged off by heat. As a matter of fact, one of the sisters opened the door and realized, we can't escape. So she shut the doors and they stayed in the room thinking that they would be rescued. Unfortunately, those students perished in that room. You just got a massive wave of heat coming up, and it's traveling at a very fast rate, and there was just no way out. The stairways were wide open, so 2 big natural chimneys in that, and that was what cut them off. There was no early warning of a fire. If there had been a modern fire alarm system, they probably would have got out, no problem. If there'd been a sprinkler system, obviously the outcome would have been different. If the fire department had been notified immediately, which some of the code changes after this was closing off stairways, making them non-combustible material. In the city of Chicago, they wanted to sprinkle the schools, but unfortunately money wasn't really prevalent at the time, so that didn't happen. That was very slow. But one thing that did happen was automatic alarms. Now, the city I worked in the city of Waterville, anytime a fire alarm got pulled in the school, the bells were ringing in the station instantaneously through the telegraph fire alarm system. So we would get on the engines and we'd be out the door within a matter of a minute and on scene, depending on if we were going to the Albert S. Hall School or the George Mitchell School, we were there quickly. But we also I think one thing that bothers me the most about this is we send our children to school. My daughter goes to school every day, and the school that she goes to is sprinkled, but other schools, kids go to school, they're not sprinkled. And the code really hasn't kind of spoken to that yet. I haven't seen a new copy of the Life Safety Code. I'm still working out of the 2009 edition. But I think that's what we need to do. We need to sprinkle our schools. We need to protect our children. There's a little bit of belief that when our kids go to school, they're safe. All right, today the big thing is gun violence, but back then it was fire, and it was a real threat.
Jimmy, oftentimes when you come here, you bring a book that supports the fire that we're talking about. Is there a book on this fire in particular?
Yeah, there's several books written about the Our Lady of Angels school fire, but this one, To Sleep with the Angels, is one of the harder books that I've ever read. I'm obviously interested in it, studied it with all the classes that we take in fire protection and fire engineering and all that, but this one's tough, and I guess I look at it as a firefighter. You know, I was saying earlier, you get that alarm and my daughter's in that school, my son's in that school, my wife's in that school, somebody's, you know, people, loved ones, and it's your ultimate job to do your job and do it well, but obviously you're going to have that personal interaction when your child is there, and some of these firefighters obviously had children in that school, and I've always thought about how they must have felt that day.
Well, thank you very much, Jim. It's always
Absolutely.
a pleasure to speak with you.
No problem, anytime.
Appreciate you coming by.
Welcome back to our segment on fraud awareness. I'm here today with Jane Margesson from AARP and Commander Mark Waltz from the Brunswick Police Department. How are you both doing today?
Great.
Very well, thank you.
Glad to hear it. So, what are we going to talk about today?
So today we wanted to cover charity scams. And charity scams are a huge problem in the United States. They typically we see a big surge in them around the holidays when a lot of people are giving back. And there are some wonderful legitimate charities in the United States, from small entities, you know, small town charities, to large ones that cover a lot of ground. But unfortunately, scammers use our good intentions to help others by creating basically false charities. And they may call and pretend that they're from, let's say, the Red Cross or another organization, venerable organization, and they'll just basically pretend to be from that agency and that they're raising money for something or other that feels very, you know, strongly something that you want to support, and they'll get you to give money, but unfortunately you're actually giving your hard-earned money to the scammer instead of to the organization. They're also very good at creating false websites that may look exactly like, let's say again, the American Red Cross that does so much great work around the country, but the name will be just slightly changed, but in a way that makes it easy that if you're not really paying attention and looking closely, it'll look like the American Red Cross's website. And again, your money is going then to the hands of the scammer instead of to the charity. So first of all, it's a really good idea to go to Charity Watch or charitynavigator.org. Both of those are just great ways to look and see if a charity is actually legitimate, if it's one you've never heard of before. And secondly, just why don't you be the person calling the charity? If somebody calls you and says, please give us money for whatever, say that's great, I appreciate your calling, but I'm actually gonna call myself. And then you know that you're calling the legitimate charity and you're not sending your hard-earned money to someone you don't know.
There's another good reason to do it that way too, is if someone's, let's say it's legitimate, call on behalf of the charity. I had one a couple weeks ago for some type of a breast cancer fund, and the person called up and they wanted me to donate. And I asked them, I said, what percentage of the donation goes to cover administrative expenses? 97%, and if they're legitimate, they have to answer you honestly, which she was, and she said, well, 97% of your donation goes to support the administrative expenses. So if I had made a donation to that charity, 3% would have actually gone to breast cancer research, and 97% would have gone to the telemarketing company. So if you do what Jane suggests, and then I call up instead the American Cancer Society or something, or the Susan G. Komen Fund or whatever, and make the donation, now they'll get 100% of my donation, as opposed to 97% go to the telemarketers. So not just from a scam perspective, but just making sure your money's well spent, you're always much better to do what Jane said and make the donation direct yourself as opposed to going through a telephone solicitation. Another thing I might add too is frequently some of the scammers will represent they're somehow connected with law enforcement. And we've had people call us over the years and say that they were told that Lieutenant so-and-so was going to come to their door to pick up the check when they put it in their screen or something. So, you know, there's actually a law in Maine that prohibits law enforcement from soliciting people for money. So if you're getting a solicitation from law enforcement, it's not legitimate. There's a few limited exceptions, like there's one for Special Olympics, and it's because all the money goes to Special Olympics and then the law enforcement. But we cannot solicit for ourselves, and so if it appears that we're doing that, that's something that's illegal.
Are there police benevolent associations? Like I come from Long Island, and there was always the PBA.
Yes.
And people donated to that. Is there something like that in Maine that people would be able to donate to, or is that still off limits?
That's still covered by this law, so
Okay.
it kind of depends on the source of it. Like for instance, our union in Brunswick will sometimes do like a fundraising softball tournament, and then the money goes to youth sports teams.
Okay.
That's okay if the money doesn't go to us, but if the money's going to the police department, we can't do it. The solicitation's illegal.
So if you get a phone call to donate to a police department in the state of Maine, don't trust that call. That's not even a legal issue.
Exactly. Yep, can't be done.
And one of the most shameful, truly shameful ways that scammers use these charity scams is with veterans. And we see a great surge during the month of November in charity scams associated with veterans. And they come up with all kinds of names, and we all care about our veterans. They've served our country. But those scammers who are using, trying to get money in the name of these individuals is, as I said, is just shameful. So I might say even be particularly wary around the veteran scams. Make sure you are actually donating your money to legitimate organizations. And another thing I would stress is that we see a great surge in charity-related scams when there are natural disasters, whether happening here in Maine or across the country or even overseas, where something terrible has happened. There's a tornado or something where people are really in trouble. The flooding that can happen in the South, particularly. Again, just check out the charities, go to charitynavigator.org, and make sure that who you're giving to is truly a legitimate organization.
And there's another website called guidestar.org. It's also interesting. If you spend much time on the computer, it's kind of fun to do research on some of these charities, and you can get copies of their tax returns and look to see if, again, you think the money's being spent well and things like that. So can be interesting to look into.
Yeah. Are there resources out there that you know of, Mark or Jane, on where people could go and just find out about local?
I think local police could be tremendously helpful.
Sure. You could ask the local police. You might be able to ask the Chamber of Commerce. They would know who. You can actually go to the Secretary of State's website to see if the companies or the charity is properly incorporated in Maine, see if they're legitimate. Word of mouth too.
Yeah.
If let's say you wanted to give for something in some type of a healthcare field, talk to some people that in a healthcare field. Who do you think spends their money well, or something like that. So yeah, take the time to do a little research, but you should be able to find out good places for your money because there's lots of them.
Yeah. Well, again, informative. So great that all this information, so much of it too. All these websites, these links. Again, these will be posted at the end of the show, and it's unfortunate that people are kind of taking advantage of charitable hearts, but again, just a little bit of proactive measures really will help out.
Yes.